Hey, what's happening? Welcome to Mates TV. I am Mate. Hi, how you doing? So we've seen a few interesting stories pertaining to Liverpool in the last few weeks. Philippe Coutinho being at the centre of a few of them, being that it's not really worked for him at Bayern Munich, having not really worked for him obviously at Barcelona, and he would be available in the summer. And inevitably that's meant Liverpool being relinked with the Brazilian creative midfielder, winger, whatever you want to call him, largely Judas, judging by the comments whenever you see his name brought up. So it's kind of sparked a little bit of thinking in my head about, the reaction when you see people talking about him coming back. There's obviously lots and lots of people who love Philippe Coutinho, and there's lots of people who really, really dislike him. In addition to that, Jamie Carragher has just done the podcast with Michael Owen, so obviously a good friend of his. He sat down, and for the first time, really, Michael Owen's gotten to get his side of things across about his departure from Liverpool in 2004, and ultimately ended up at Manchester United, etc., etc., and ultimately tarnishing his Liverpool reputation. So it got me thinking about whether Philippe Coutinho could ever come back to Liverpool, and then the list of those so-called Judas ex-players, or the players that broke our hearts as Liverpool fans down the years, and why they broke the heart, and why some of them are thought of fondly and some of them are absolutely dead to the entire fan base. I'm going to delve into that in a second, but first, this video and the podcast associated with it is associated and sponsored by the One Football app, which I think is absolutely stupendous. It is part of my weekly routine. You get notifications on all of world football, the latest updates on Liverpool Football Club. You get a match day centre, articles, videos, the latest on transfers, and it's all on your mobile phone. I'll put a link in the description underneath. Go there, download it, and let me know in the comment section underneath how you're getting on with the One Football app if you've got it already. Very, very good, and thank you very much to them for being in partnership with me on this. Right. Let's dive into it then. So the list of players for me that I kind of want to cover, and it goes back further than this. In my lifetime, it probably starts with Robbie Fowler. Absolutely crestfallen I was when he moved to Leeds United. It moves on, then you had Michael Owen in 2004, leaving for Real Madrid. Moving on from then, you had Fernando Torres in 2010? 11? You had Fernando Torres moving to Chelsea, and moving on from that, you then had Luis Suarez moving to Barcelona, Raheem Sterling moving to Man City, and then Philippe Coutinho moving to Barcelona. And I find it funny that there's some players within there who we still think of really, really fondly, and there are others to varying degrees that Liverpool fans absolutely loathe and detest. And the Michael Owen thing I thought was quite interesting because he's probably the ultimate one who's forever tarnished his reputation with Liverpool fans. And one of the things Carragher delves into on the podcast is saying, look, why did you sign for Manchester United? And that becomes the crux of it. I was, at the time, take yourself back to 2004, Michael Owen left for Real Madrid for £8 million. And bearing in mind that although he will attest that his powers were well on the wane by that point, he was still a global superstar. He was arguably Liverpool's second best player, or at least Liverpool's second biggest asset, alongside, maybe slightly below Steven Gerrard at that point. So to allow himself to be in a situation, and some of this will be the club's fault, of course, and as it always is, to allow himself to be in a position where you can get £8 million from when he was probably a 20, 25, 30 odd £million player back in the day when that was a substantial amount of money, and not just what you pay for a squad player, was absolutely devastating, particularly when it was Rafa Benitez coming in. Maybe he, dropped the ball in terms of convincing Owen what to do, but we were gutted. But not quite as gutted as when the opportunity arose, and he ultimately went to Newcastle instead of Liverpool for a variety of reasons. Again, check out Jamie's podcast for that. But then, further down the line, choosing to play for Manchester United, and then, subsequently come back to Anfield. I remember singing, should have signed for a big club was the big one when he came back with Newcastle. Obviously, he goes on and he has success and what have you. You've got Robbie Fowler going back before that, leaves for Leeds United. He had a public falling out with Phil Thompson and Gerard Houllier, and they looked to cash in on him. I spoke to Robbie a couple of months ago, and he said, again, his attitude maybe wasn't quite what it should have been at the time. But I think the ones that really stand out, the most bitter ones, because Michael Owen leaving he didn't leave in as acrimonious a set of circumstances, because, he went to Real Madrid. It happened. Steve McManaman would have trodden that path going on a free transfer before him. So look at the ones that are most recent. Luis Suarez, where we weren't anywhere near as pissed off with him for leaving at the time, although maybe we should have been, because I think Liverpool had a very good chance of winning the league the following season, having come second, if he just stuck around for one more year. It took until the Barcelona game last year for people to truly, truly hate Luis Suarez because of his absolutely full-on Suarez shithouse behaviour in the Champions League games, and singing "fuck off Suarez" just to basically stick one up him was wonderfully cathartic in that regard. But I still think people think of Luis Suarez in really positive terms. You know, if you said to me Suarez would come back on a free, you'd be like, yeah, go on, I'll have a little bit of Suarez back in my life. Fernando Torres is probably the one that was the most bitter at the time, and for me the one that last genuinely broke my heart, because I love Torres. I mean, that was that era. I'd have been mid-20s around that point. It was just in the period prior to us starting to make Redmen TV. I was going to the pub for the big Champions League games with my mates, and playing it when he scored against Inter Milan. And I remember being in his game, his debut at Anfield, when he skins Tal Ben-Haim against Chelsea, and he's just unbelievable. And he was brilliant, the gold locks, and he was the best centre forward in the world at the time. He had the best song Liverpool had in years as well, and we loved him. And I think him leaving at the time, you look at it from an emotional perspective, it felt like a massive kick in the teeth. And I think we all knew Liverpool were on the wane at that time in our heart of hearts, but equally, you always got to feel like it's salvageable. We had Roy Hodgson. It's forgivable for Torres. He just wins the World Cup. He's draped in a Liverpool flag shortly afterwards, and you think he's going to come back and maybe things will kick on for him. And then you've got Roy Hodgson as your manager, and it's never got to. But then Kenny comes in. I remember seeing him actually driving past him on the way home as he was driving away from Melwood, and had a big beaming smile. I thought, he's met with Kenny. This is going to be it. This is going to be him reigniting his Liverpool career. And within days, well, weeks, he's off to Chelsea. And he talked about them being like a top level club, and the intimation that is that Liverpool weren't, and that really hurt. And I absolutely slaughtered Torres, slaughtered him on social media, on the Red Men channel. We did comedy sketches about him and all kinds of stuff, and we were horrible to to Torres at the time, horrible to him. That was the one, and for me, that was probably the last one that truly hurt. So the Suarez one didn't have the same impact, but in terms of following on from that, you then got Raheem Sterling, and that was another one that, again, we didn't realise just how far we've fallen. You always feel as though you're only ever one signing away from being a title challenging team when you're not a title challenging team, because you have to, because that's the conceit you have to buy into as a fan, that you're only ever a shrewd piece of tactical play or a great signing away from being the side that you want to be. Whereas, from an emotional perspective, Sterling, the way it was handled with his agent, and you had AD Ward, I think, at the time, and having one greedy bastard again, and Raheem Sterling, your agent, and not being sung by the cop. He was warned, and then he went down this path, and look, he went for silverware, and I don't think you can argue, but much like Suarez, you can't really argue it. He goes on, and the two that probably hurt the most in recent times is definitely Suarez and Sterling, because Liverpool was shit, and they actually probably the few examples of footballers that leave Liverpool and become better. I mean, look at the previous ones. Robbie Fowler was never a better footballer than he was at Liverpool. Go back to Ian Rush, never a better footballer than his first spell at Liverpool. Kevin Keegan probably before that as well. Michael Owen's career never really reached the peaks that it had at the start at Liverpool. Fernando Torres, he became a meme, for how bad he was at Chelsea. Ultimately wins the Champions League, and Michael Owen wins the Premier League, but with the same level of players that they were for us, and were they loved by fans in the same way they were loved by us? No, and that actually became a little bit of a badge of pride or honour, that we kind of like, stick it up, you lads. You got what you deserve. I feel like Coutinho is back to that mould where you can live with players moving on, because when they're not having successful careers, it's kind of like being dumped by your bird and then finding out she's put on loads of weight and she's with an absolute just heffing knobhead of a fella, and you kind of go, yeah, got what you deserved, didn't you? Got what you deserved. Definitely not speaking from experience. From a business perspective, I find these things interesting, because the Coutinho one in particular, do I harbour any ill feeling towards Coutinho? A bit, because at the time, he threw Liverpool's seasonal plans into disarray, basically going on strike as the season started. Adam Lallana got injured in the build-up to that season, and they were going to be pivotal to how Liverpool played, and I think Klopp had to adapt on the fly. He then comes back in, and he's performing at a world-class level, but I'm able to look at it now and say, look at all of these decisions down the line. Let's go back to the start, and Robbie Fowler leaving meant that, okay, yes, we got Nicholas and Elker in the short term, that was fine. It ended up being a bad decision, because we then ended up with Elijah Diouf wearing the number 9 shirt. Bad call. But Liverpool then go on and they have, the Champions League success, etc., etc. Fernando Torres, did we spend the money wisely? No, we spent it on Andy Carroll, so that hurt. But we did also have Luis Suarez, so that ended up softening the blow. Then you move forward to Suarez. Suarez should have hurt us the most, because what did we do with the Luis Suarez money? Nothing. We ended up with Mario Balotelli and Ricky Lambert, and still Fabio Borini up front. Yeah, we should have been fucking raging about that, shouldn't we? And Sterling, again, probably a little bit pissed off, because we had to see him be successful with City, and Liverpool didn't really reinvest the money in the smartest way. The Coutinho stuff, though, and why I have almost zero ill feeling now to Phil Coutinho, is him making that decision. Liverpool got to the Champions League final that season. They were galvanised by his leaving, so we'll never know whether, if he stayed, look, would he have been fit, and would we have had one more player to put in the game against Real Madrid? Would we have been able to cope? Would we still have been a threat? Maybe. But butterfly effect, might we have got knocked out in the knockout stages? Possibly, just as possibly. We'll never know on that. But the money that we got for him effectively funded the Liverpool that are right now the best Liverpool there's ever been. The best Liverpool team, it's certainly in my lifetime, and probably the best team in the world right now. Can't be honest on Mundo. So yeah, I do genuinely struggle to be totally angry with Phil. There is a bit of a sense of like, nah, look what's happened to you, it's all your fault. And I have a bit of that with Emre Can as well, to be perfectly honest. But I think that I've used this analogy before, but it's kind of like when you become a parent, and you have your first child, and you realise that every mistake you think about, you have those failures in your life that haunt you. I hope you've got them. I hope it's not just me. Well, I hope you haven't got them, to be fair. But if you have things that haunt you, decisions you wish you'd taken, I wish I'd done things this way, I wish I'd made that decision, I wish I'd asked that girl out, I wish I'd gone for that job, I wish I'd picked that money off the floor, whatever. All those regrets go away the second that you have your first child, because you realise that everything that's happened in your life has led to this point. Every single minuscule decision, every step you took, every breath you took, because of the millions and millions of sperm, etc., etc., the odds, all it would have taken was a different step one way, or you being slightly sweatier on the day, or whatever. And you wouldn't have had that child, the child that you've got, the child that you love so much. And to carry it forward with Liverpool, as much as I don't think Liverpool need Coutinho back in the future, I think he's at his day. I think he's in an age now where, for the money he's going to cost, I don't think it represents good financial sense to get him back. But I don't harbour the level of depth of ill feeling towards him that I do, and I think we should do to a lot of other players because of that. Because it's not necessarily it wasn't his decision to have this happen, but the way it happened, Phil Coutinho had to leave Liverpool in order for Liverpool to be the team that they are today. We had to have the money to spend on Virgil van Dijk and Alisson Becker, and the bits and pieces that we did, post Kiev as well. Your Fabinho's, tying down Keita finally, etc., etc. So, I understand the dislike in Coutinho. I understand why people might be upset, because as football fans, we're naturally emotional people. And it's not our job to look at things from a business perspective. We just go out there and we sing our team's the greatest team the world's ever seen, regardless of whether our team is good or absolutely turd. We have to buy into that conceit of all the lads who pull on the shirt are the best players in the world and the best players for the job, etc., etc. They're the people who get our support. We don't have to support people who don't want to throw all in on the football club, because we want people to feel like us, and that's what we love about this modern Liverpool, what we love about Jurgen Klopp, and we dislike about the players who've chosen to go elsewhere. Ultimately, fuck them. But yeah, Philippe Coutinho, my point, I guess, is that if Jurgen Klopp ever decided he wanted him back, I could probably shrug my shoulders and deal with it and welcome back with open arms. I mean, I would request that he gets a tunnel of death as he walks through the Melwood car park from all the Liverpool players who were in the squad, who had to pull the extra weight. He has to crawl on his hands and knees, and they just get to free kick him as he goes along the line. That would be absolutely fine by me. But yeah, I wouldn't be against most Liverpool players coming back. And it opens the question about Michael Owen. Have you ever actually forgiven Michael Owen? Have you forgiven Fernando Torres? Have you forgiven Suarez? Have you forgiven all these players? And if you have, why, when you don't necessarily forgive other ones? I get Sterling because he's still a competitor in the league. That makes sense to me. But let me know. Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Yeah, thank you very much to everyone for watching. If you want more from me, go over to patreon.com/mate. We've got a small gang of people over there. We're forming a little tight-knit community. People who help me, make decisions on videos, they get behind the scenes stuff, and they get extra bonus content as well, and it helps support the channel. So yeah, if you want to go over and be a patron, a mate patron, one of the mate ultras, then by all means, please do. I'll link to it in the description underneath. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. Thoughts below. See you all soon. Nice one.